Whenever we hear the word Illuminati, we instantly think of shadowy figures controlling the world from the shadows, powerful elites, secret meetings, and hidden symbols. But here's the real problem. Everything we think we know about the Illuminati is mixed with conspiracy theories, myths, and half-truths. So, in this video, we're going to cut through the noise and uncover the real untold history of the Illuminati, separating fact from fiction and revealing secrets that history books often ignore. Welcome back, history seekers. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most controversial and mysterious subjects of all time, the Illuminati. From its secret beginnings in 18th century Bavaria to the countless conspiracy theories that dominate our modern world, the Illuminati has become a symbol of hidden power and forbidden knowledge. But what's the truth? Stick with us, because by the end of this video, you'll see the Illuminati in a way you've never imagined before. Imagine a Europe in the late 1700s, a world teetering on the edge of change. Old monarchies ruled with iron fists. The Catholic Church still wielded immense power over thought and belief, and questioning authority often meant exile, prison, or even death. But beneath the rigid surface, whispers of revolution were spreading. The Enlightenment was sweeping across Europe, challenging ancient traditions, pushing for reason, freedom, and equality. It was in this storm of change that the seeds of one of history's most mysterious societies were planted, the Illuminati. The year was 1776, and while America was declaring its independence across the ocean, in the quiet town of Ingolstadt, Bavaria, a brilliant but restless professor was plotting his own revolution, not with weapons, but with ideas. His name was Adam Weishaupt. Raised in a deeply religious society, trained by Jesuits from a young age, Weishaupt grew up in an environment that valued obedience to authority and unquestioning faith. But he was different. He had tasted the works of philosophers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu. He was drawn to reason, science, and the belief that knowledge could set humanity free. And he despised the suffocating grip of the church and the monarchy over people's lives. Weishaupt looked around and saw a society drowning in superstition, chained by dogma and ruled by elites who thrived on keeping the masses ignorant. To him, the path forward was clear. Humanity needed a secret brotherhood, a group that could operate outside the reach of priests and kings, spreading the values of freedom, equality, and reason quietly, but effectively. That vision gave birth to the Bavarian Illuminati. At first, the society was small, barely more than a handful of dedicated followers. They met in secrecy, often under the cover of night, using code names and hidden rituals to mask their identities. Weishaupt himself took the name Spartacus, symbolizing resistance against oppression. His early followers were carefully chosen: students, lawyers, intellectuals, and men who were dissatisfied with the rigid order of Bavarian society. Their mission was ambitious: to infiltrate the existing structures of power and transform them from within. Not through violent revolution, but through persuasion, education, and influence. What made the Illuminati different from other groups of the era was their method. They weren't just a fraternity of philosophers sitting around debating ideas. They were an organized, hierarchical society with secret codes, layered ranks, and a system designed to filter out those who weren't truly loyal. Recruits were tested, their loyalty measured, their dedication questioned. The higher one rose within the order, the more secrets were revealed. At the lowest levels, members might believe they were simply part of a group dedicated to self-improvement and Enlightenment values. But as they climbed higher, they were drawn deeper into Weishaupt's grand designer plan to reshape the entire fabric of society. This was no accident. Weishaupt understood that secrecy was power. If the Illuminati were to survive and grow, they had to remain hidden. Their influence felt but never seen. And so the group borrowed elements from Freemasonry, another secretive brotherhood popular in Europe at the time. They used symbolic rituals, cryptic writings, and hierarchies of initiation to both protect themselves and attract those intrigued by mystery. Soon, the Illuminati began to spread beyond Ingolstadt, slowly weaving their web through Bavaria and then across parts of Europe. To the outside world, the Illuminati were invisible. But behind the veil, their reach was expanding. Weishaupt's dream was becoming reality. His society aimed to dismantle tyranny and religious control, not with swords, but with ideas planted in the minds of influential men. He believed that by guiding thinkers, politicians, and reformers, the Illuminati could push humanity toward enlightenment and reason. It was an audacious plan, one that would require patience, strategy, and absolute loyalty from its members. But secrecy has a price. The very methods that made the Illuminati effective also made them suspicious. Whispers began to spread. Who were these men meeting in shadows? Why did they hide their names? What did their strange symbols mean? In an age already paranoid about secret plots and revolutions, the existence of such a group was bound to attract attention. Yet in those early years, the Illuminati thrived in their obscurity, growing quietly while the rest of Europe focused on revolutions and wars. What is striking about these beginnings is how ordinary the society truly was compared to the monstrous legends it would later inspire. At its heart, the Bavarian Illuminati wasn't about global domination, ancient mysteries, or demonic rituals. It was about ideas, freedom of thought, resistance to oppression, and the hope of a new world order built not on superstition, but on reason. Adam Weishaupt didn't see himself as the architect of a shadow empire. He saw himself as a liberator, a man daring to challenge centuries of control through intellect and secrecy. And yet the seeds planted in those quiet Bavarian nights would grow into something far beyond what Weishaupt could ever have imagined. The society he created, designed to operate in silence and secrecy, would become one of the most talked about, feared, and mythologized groups in human history. What began as a small idealistic brotherhood in 1776 would one day be accused of controlling revolutions, governments, and even the course of human destiny. As the Bavarian Illuminati slowly began to grow in influence, its vision became clearer, and so did the stark difference between what it claimed to be and how the world would later imagine it. At its core, this society was not about mysterious handshakes, demonic rituals, or plots for world domination. Instead, it was born from the clash between two opposing forces of the 18th century, the ideals of the Enlightenment and the entrenched power of church and monarchy. To understand the Illuminati, you have to step into that world and see the fight not through the eyes of conspiracy theories, but through the men who risked everything to belong to it. Adam Weishaupt had imagined an organization that would bring light to a world drowning in superstition. The word Illuminati itself carried the meaning of the enlightened ones, a name that reflected its purpose to awaken minds, free people from blind obedience, and lead them toward reason and knowledge. Its members weren't plotting wars, they were debating philosophy. They weren't chasing after wealth and domination. They were wrestling with the question of how to build a society guided by logic instead of fear. The principles they cherished were radical for the time. They promoted freedom of thought when questioning authority could land you in prison. They believed in equality in an era when social classes were rigid and most people were powerless. They spoke of liberty when monarchs claimed their right to rule came directly from God. To the Illuminati, these weren't just abstract ideas. They were weapons. Ideas could be sharper than swords, more powerful than armies, and once planted in the minds of influential men, they could spark revolutions. But this vision clashed violently with the world they lived in. The Catholic Church and the Bavarian monarchy saw themselves as guardians of tradition and order. To them, hierarchy was sacred and obedience was a virtue. Anyone who challenged that system threatened not just the institutions of power, but the very stability of society. So while the Illuminati saw themselves as a beacon of progress, their enemies saw them as dangerous heretics working in the shadows to destroy faith and authority. This tension created a double life for every member of the Illuminati. By day, they were scholars, lawyers, politicians, or students-men who followed the rules, attended church, and appeared loyal to the system. By night, they slipped into their secret gatherings, shedding the masks of obedience and embracing ideas that could cost them everything. In these hidden meetings, they discussed not just philosophy, but strategies for influence. They knew their survival depended on subtlety. Open rebellion would mean immediate destruction, so they chose infiltration. If they could place members in positions of power, If they could guide governments and institutions from within, then change would come not with violence, but like a tide, slow, unstoppable, reshaping the shoreline of history without warning. This approach made the Illuminati both bold and fragile. Their ideals gave them purpose, but their secrecy left them vulnerable to suspicion. Even as they swore to fight oppression, they became entangled in the very methods of secrecy and manipulation they despised. Critics accused them of hypocrisy. How could a society dedicated to truth and reason operate in such darkness? To the Illuminati, the answer was survival. They believed the light of their ideals was too bright for their time, and so it had to be hidden until the world was ready to see it. The ideals of the Illuminati also attracted controversy within their own ranks. Not every member joined for noble reasons. Some were drawn by the promise of influence, others by curiosity, and a few by the simple thrill of belonging to something secret. Weishaupt's vision was ambitious, but it was also fragile, constantly tested by the human flaws of those who carried it. This tension between the purity of their ideals and the reality of their actions would become one of the defining features of their history. Yet, despite these challenges, the Illuminati continued to expand. Their Enlightenment-inspired philosophy resonated with many who were frustrated by the suffocating grip of church and monarchy. They offered an alternative path, one that whispered of liberation, education, and the possibility of a society not ruled by fear but guided by reason. These were dangerous promises, but they were also intoxicating. In an age where questioning the wrong authority could ruin a man's life, the Illuminati provided a secret sanctuary for those hungry for change. What is striking is that the very things that would later fuel wild conspiracies were, in these early years, rooted in genuine philosophical debates. The Illuminati were not masters of puppets pulling the strings of kings and revolutions. They were dreamers, rebels of thought, trying to survive in a world that saw their beliefs as treason. And while their goals seemed simple: freedom, equality, knowledge, the methods they employed, the secrecy they embraced, and the suspicion they attracted would turn their story into something far greater than Weishaupt ever imagined. It was this clash between ideals and reality, between vision and execution, that defined the early Illuminati. They wanted to bring light to the world, but in doing so, they were forced to move in the shadows. They spoke of freedom, yet demanded strict loyalty and obedience from their members. They preached transparency of truth, yet relied on codes, symbols, and hidden networks. And it was this contradiction, the noble dream trapped in secret practices, that would eventually bring them both strength and suspicion. By the late 1780s, the Illuminati had grown far beyond Adam Weishaupt's small circle of students in Ingolstadt. What had started as a secret brotherhood of a few men had spread across Bavaria and into other parts of Europe, quietly drawing in scholars, nobles, and even members of the powerful Freemasons. Their network was expanding, their influence deepening, and for a brief moment, it seemed as if the Illuminati might actually succeed in shaping the future of society. But success in the shadows is always dangerous. The more the group grew, the more it attracted suspicion, and the very secrecy that had protected it began to work against it. Europe in the 1780s was a world of paranoia. Monarchs feared rebellion, the church feared heresy, and whispers of secret societies seemed to echo everywhere. The French Revolution was just on the horizon, and many believed invisible hands were already pulling the strings of unrest. In this climate, the Illuminati became an easy target for fear and speculation. Governments didn't need proof. The very existence of a secret brotherhood with a mission to challenge authority was enough to spark alarm. In Bavaria, the Catholic Church and the ruling authorities grew increasingly uneasy. Reports surfaced of strange gatherings, coded messages, and men of influence meeting behind closed doors. Priests warned from their pulpits that shadowy forces were working to undermine faith and morality. Politicians whispered that these enlightened men were plotting to overthrow the monarchy. What had begun as a small intellectual movement was now being painted as a conspiracy capable of tearing apart the very foundations of society. For Adam Weishaupt, the danger was becoming impossible to ignore. He had always believed that secrecy was their shield, but secrecy also bred suspicion. The Illuminati's growing ties with Freemasonry only fueled the rumors. Freemasons were already viewed with distrust, accused of harboring hidden knowledge and dangerous loyalties. By merging with them, the Illuminati gained numbers and influence, but also inherited an even darker reputation. Suddenly, the Illuminati were not just a group of thinkers, they were a network of conspirators stretching across Europe, or so the authorities believed. By 1784, the Bavarian government had had enough. Under orders from Elector Karl Theodor, an edict was issued banning all secret societies. Freemasons, Illuminati, and any other such groups were declared illegal. At first, many thought the Illuminati could survive this decree. After all, secrecy was their strength, but the crackdown intensified, informants were planted. Raids were carried out, documents were seized, and when those documents were revealed, the world saw the inner workings of the society laid bare. What was uncovered shocked the authorities. They found records of recruitment strategies, instructions for members, and writings that openly criticized religion and monarchy. To the Bavarian rulers and the Catholic Church, this was the proof they needed. Here was an organization that not only dreamed of reform, but had actively plotted to influence politics and society in ways that threatened the old order. The Illuminati were no longer just a rumor, they were an enemy. Weishaupt was forced to flee, disguising himself to escape capture. Many of his followers were interrogated, exiled, or publicly shamed. Some renounced their membership, others disappeared into silence, and a few continued to operate underground. The grand vision of a secret network guiding society toward enlightenment collapsed under the weight of government persecution. Officially, by the late 1780s, the Illuminati were dissolved, dismantled by the very forces they had sought to challenge. But the story didn't end there. Because once an idea takes root in the imagination of the public, it is almost impossible to kill. The suppression of the Illuminati didn't erase them from history, it immortalized them. The crackdown gave birth to something far more powerful than the society itself, the myth of the Illuminati. Suddenly, the world was asking questions. If the Illuminati had been dismantled, what if some members had survived? What if they had simply gone deeper underground? What if they were still operating, quietly pulling strings from the shadows? And so the Illuminati entered a new phase of existence, no longer just a secret brotherhood in Bavaria, but a whispered presence in every dark corner of history. Whenever a revolution erupted, whenever a monarch fell, whenever society shifted in ways that frightened those in power, the Illuminati became the convenient suspect. They may have been officially crushed, but the idea of their survival haunted Europe. The government's victory had created the perfect seedbed for conspiracy theories. In a strange way, suppression gave the Illuminati more power than they had ever achieved while active. Their name became a symbol, their reputation inflated by fear, and their influence magnified not by actions but by imagination. The documents seized by the authorities revealed just enough to confirm that the Illuminati were real, but left enough unanswered questions to feed endless speculation. And as history would soon show, unanswered questions are the perfect fuel for legends that never die. When the Bavarian authorities dismantled the Illuminati in the late 1780s, they thought they had stamped out a dangerous society once and for all. The edicts had been issued, the documents exposed, and Adam Weishaupt himself forced into exile. To the rulers of Bavaria, the matter was closed. But history has a strange way of twisting endings into new beginnings, and what followed was far more powerful than anything the Illuminati could have achieved during its short lifespan. With the order dissolved, its secrets spilled into the public, and in that chaos, the legend of the Illuminati was born. The truth is, people fear what they cannot see, and the Illuminati had always thrived on mystery. For years, whispers had surrounded them, secret initiations, coded messages, hidden agendas. Now that the group was officially banned, the fear only deepened. If they had been destroyed, why were people still talking about them? If their documents had been exposed, why did so many questions remain unanswered? Were they truly gone, or had they simply slipped deeper into the shadows? These unanswered questions gave birth to rumors, and those rumors became myths. By the turn of the 19th century, the Illuminati had become the perfect scapegoat for a rapidly changing world. The French Revolution erupted in 1789 and it shook Europe to its core. Monarchs were overthrown, churches desecrated, and entire social structures dismantled in the name of liberty and equality. For those in power who couldn't understand how such upheaval had spread so quickly, there was a simple explanation: secret societies. And who better to blame than the Illuminati? Pamphlets and books began to circulate, accusing Weishaupt's followers of masterminding the revolution, pulling strings from behind the scenes, and using chaos as their weapon. Writers such as Abbe Barul in France and John Robison in Scotland fueled the fire with sensational claims that the Illuminati had infiltrated Freemasonry, governments, and revolutionary movements across Europe. Their books warned that the Illuminati were not gone but very much alive, plotting to dismantle civilization and replace it with a new world order of their own design. These warnings spread like wildfire, feeding the paranoia of rulers and the fears of ordinary people. To many, the French Revolution was no longer seen as the work of the people, but as the handiwork of hidden masterminds. The Illuminati had become a ghostly presence in political discourse, blamed for events they likely had no hand in. As decades passed, the myth grew bolder. The Illuminati were no longer just accused of stirring revolutions in Europe. They were said to have infiltrated entire governments, controlling ministers, generals, and kings from behind closed doors. The image of the Illuminati shifted from an obscure Bavarian brotherhood of philosophers to a shadow empire that spanned continents. Every war, every uprising, every collapse of authority became tied to their invisible hand. And the less evidence there was, the stronger the conspiracy became. What made these myths so enduring was their flexibility. The Illuminati could be blamed for anything and everything. If a monarch was overthrown, they were accused. If a church lost influence, they were accused. If a new philosophy threatened tradition, it was said to be their work. They became the invisible enemy of order, the secret architects of chaos. And in a world where people struggled to make sense of rapid change, the idea of a hidden group pulling the strings felt easier to grasp than the messy truth of social unrest and human ambition. As time moved into the 19th and 20th centuries, the myth of the Illuminati took on a life of its own, traveling far beyond Europe. Across the Atlantic in the young United States, fears of secret societies gripped the imagination. Politicians warned of infiltration, newspapers printed lurid stories, and the Illuminati became a whispered threat to democracy. Even though there was no evidence that the Bavarian order had survived, the fear of its influence was enough to shape political debates and inspire movements against secret societies. The irony is striking. The real Illuminati had only existed for about a decade, and their goals were rooted in philosophy, not domination. Yet, through rumor and speculation, they were reborn as the ultimate symbol of hidden control. Every secret meeting, every unexplained symbol, every political shift could be tied to them. And as conspiracy theories grew, the Illuminati became less about what they had actually done and more about what people believed they could do. The myths turned them into something larger than life, something beyond time. By the 20th century, the Illuminati were no longer confined to dusty history books about Bavaria. They had become part of a wider conspiracy culture linked to banking elites, shadow governments, global revolutions, and even supernatural forces. Their name alone evoked the idea of a hidden elite, guiding the fate of nations without ever revealing their faces. And so, what had begun as a small society of Enlightenment thinkers became a legend that stretched across centuries. The suppression of the Illuminati had not erased them. It had transformed them into a story that could be told and retold in endless forms. A story of hidden hands, unseen powers, and secret plots that lingered wherever fear and mystery thrived. When most people today hear the word Illuminati, one of the first things that comes to mind is the imagery, the symbols that supposedly represent their hidden influence. The all-seeing eye, the unfinished pyramid, cryptic hand gestures, even the idea that certain shapes and numbers carry hidden meanings. But how did these symbols become so strongly connected to the Illuminati? Were they truly born from the secret society itself? Or are they inventions of later generations eager to weave a deeper mystery? To answer this, we have to trace the story of symbols, how they emerged, and why they have endured. In the original Bavarian Illuminati, symbols played a role, but not in the exaggerated way we imagine today. Adam Weishaupt and his followers believed secrecy was the key to survival, and with secrecy came codes, ciphers, and symbolic representations. Members often adopted pseudonyms. From classical history, Weishaupt himself became Spartacus, and correspondence was filled with coded messages designed to obscure meaning if intercepted. But the grand symbols we now associate with the Illuminati, like the all-seeing eye and the pyramid, weren't part of the original design. Instead, much of their imagery was borrowed from or later tied to other secret societies, particularly the Freemasons, whose elaborate rituals and symbolic architecture fascinated the public. The all-seeing eye, for example, is one of the most recognized images in conspiracy culture. A single eye surrounded by rays of light, often enclosed in a triangle, representing divine providence or the watchful presence of higher power. Its roots go back to Christian iconography, where it symbolized God's omniscience. Freemasons adopted it as a sign of enlightenment and spiritual vision, and over time, conspiracy theorists tied it to the Illuminati as proof of their omnipresent surveillance. Today, you can find the all-seeing eye on the American dollar bill, hovering above a pyramid, and for many, that is undeniable evidence of Illuminati influence in the founding of the United States. But history tells a more complicated story. The symbol was chosen for the Great Seal of the United States in the 18th century to represent divine guidance and strength, not Weishaupt's secret brotherhood. Yet the overlap of time and the mystery surrounding secret societies allowed the association to grow. The unfinished pyramid is another symbol often linked to the Illuminati. Its sharp lines and towering shape are said to represent strength and endurance, while the fact that it is incomplete suggests ongoing progress, the idea of building toward a new order. At the top of the pyramid, the all-seeing eye watches over humanity, a fusion of two symbols that conspiracy theorists claim reveal the Illuminati's hand in shaping governments and societies. But again, historical evidence suggests that the Bavarian Illuminati themselves never used such imagery. Instead, these associations were layered onto their legend over time, as people searched for clues in architecture, art, and currency, convinced that hidden messages were left in plain sight. Beyond these grand symbols, hand signs, numbers, and coded gestures also became tied to the Illuminati myth. The triangle made with one's hands, for example, has been interpreted as a secret salute, representing the pyramid and the eye within it. Celebrities flashing this gesture in photos or on stage are often accused of signaling allegiance to the Illuminati, though in reality it is usually a coincidence or a creative pose. Numbers too have become part of the mythology, especially the number 13, often associated with rebellion, secrecy, or power. Whether carved into architecture, hidden in logos, or embedded in popular culture, these symbols are said to reveal the presence of the Illuminati operating just out of sight. But why do symbols hold such power? Part of the answer lies in human psychology. Symbols are timeless, visual shortcuts to complex ideas. They evoke emotion, mystery, and curiosity in ways that words often cannot. For a secret society like the Illuminati, whether real or imagined, symbols serve as the perfect cloak. They allow believers and skeptics alike to see patterns where, alive, none may exist. A triangle here, an eye there, and suddenly the ordinary becomes extraordinary, the mundane becomes a message, and the imagination fills in the rest. As the centuries passed, popular culture amplified these associations. Novels, films, music videos, and television shows filled their stories with references to hidden eyes, pyramids, and secret handshakes. Pop stars covering one eye in a performance, a pyramid shape appearing in a music video backdrop, or even a corporate logo resembling an ancient symbol all became evidence in the public's mind that the Illuminati were not just alive but actively shaping culture. The truth mattered less than the perception. Once the connection between symbols and secrecy was made, the myth only grew stronger. What's fascinating is that these symbols are now so deeply embedded in our culture that they've taken on a life of their own. Whether or not the Illuminati ever used them, they have become inseparable from the society's legend. They are the visual language of conspiracy, the shorthand of a belief that something larger, hidden, and controlling is at work. And for many, seeing these symbols is proof enough, regardless of history or fact. In today's world, the word Illuminati has escaped the confines of dusty history books and exploded into popular culture. It is no longer just the story of Adam Weishaupt and his Bavarian brotherhood of intellectuals. Instead, it has become a symbol, a myth, and for many, a frightening reality. Movies, music videos, political scandals, internet forums, all are filled with claims that the Illuminati are still alive, still operating, and still pulling the strings of global power. But how did a small Enlightenment-era society transform into the ultimate conspiracy theory? The answer lies in how fact and fiction have blurred together over centuries, until separating one from the other became nearly impossible. When the Bavarian Illuminati were suppressed in the late 1700s, their real story could have ended there. Yet the fear of secret societies didn't vanish. Writers in the 18th and 19th centuries kept their memory alive by connecting them to revolutions, uprisings, and political turmoil. This was the beginning of a long tradition of blaming the Illuminati for almost every major shift in society. By the time the 20th century arrived, the Illuminati had already been woven into the fabric of conspiracy thinking, their image magnified far beyond their actual deeds. But it was the rise of mass media in the 20th century that truly transformed the Illuminati into a cultural phenomenon. With film, television, and eventually the internet, the myth gained a global audience. The Illuminati became the perfect villain for stories about hidden power. Secret meetings in smoke-filled rooms, faceless elites deciding the fate of nations, mysterious symbols flashing across the screen. All of these tropes fed into the public imagination. Suddenly, the Illuminati weren't just historical figures from Bavaria. They were timeless manipulators shaping everything from world wars to economic collapses. Popular culture cemented this perception. Hollywood embraced the idea of secret societies controlling events from the shadows, with thrillers and adventure films weaving the Illuminati into their plots. Books like Don Brown's Angels and Demons introduced millions of readers to a fictionalized version of the society, filled with secret codes, hidden symbols, and grand conspiracies that spanned centuries. Even though these works were fiction, they blurred the line between entertainment and reality. For many viewers and readers, the distinction didn't matter. The Illuminati were real enough because the stories felt real. And then came the explosion of music culture and celebrity rumors. In the 21st century, pop stars, rappers, and actors suddenly found themselves accused of being pawns or members of the Illuminati. A singer covering one eye in a performance, a rapper forming a triangle shape with his hands, or a stage set featuring pyramids or glowing eyes, all became so-called proof of allegiance. For fans and skeptics alike, these moments weren't coincidences. They were signals. The internet amplified this obsession with forums, YouTube channels, and social media accounts dedicated to exposing the Illuminati's grip on entertainment. It didn't matter if the artist denied it, denial itself was seen as part of the cover-up. This modern obsession reveals something deeper about human psychology. People crave explanations for power, fame, and influence. When someone rises to extraordinary success, whether a politician, a tech billionaire, or a pop star, the leap from ordinary person to global figure can feel impossible to comprehend. The Illuminati offers a simple explanation. They didn't achieve it on their own. They were chosen, recruited, or assisted by a secret power that rewards loyalty with fame and fortune. It's a seductive idea because it removes the mystery of success and replaces it with a hidden system of control. But here's where fact and fiction blur most sharply. Historically, the Illuminati were a small group with limited reach, crushed within a decade of their founding. They never controlled governments, they never dictated revolutions, and they certainly weren't orchestrating global events. Yet in the modern imagination, they are portrayed as almost godlike and eternal cabal, whispering orders from the shadows, leaving symbols in plain sight for those clever enough to notice. The myth has become larger than the truth, and in many ways it has erased the truth altogether. And still, the allure of the Illuminati endures. Every time a major world event occurs, speculation arises. Was this orchestrated by hidden elites? Did the Illuminati plan it years in advance? Each new crisis, from economic downturns to global conflicts, becomes fertile ground for suspicion. The very absence of evidence is often used as proof. After all, what better sign of their power than the fact that they can operate without ever being exposed? In the digital age, this myth has grown even stronger. Memes, viral videos, and online debates keep the Illuminati alive in ways Adam Weishaupt could never have imagined. They are no longer just a secret society of the past. They are a living, breathing idea that evolves with every generation. The Illuminati of today are not the Bavarian intellectuals of 1776. They are a projection of our fears, our suspicions, and our search for hidden order in a chaotic world. They exist in the blurred space between reality and imagination, between history and pop culture, where fact and fiction collide until they are indistinguishable. So, what have we uncovered in this journey through the shadows of history? We began with a secret group of thinkers in Bavaria, men who dared to challenge religious and political power in 1776. They weren't tea sorcerers or world rulers. They were intellectuals with a vision of reason, equality, and enlightenment. Yet their secrecy made them vulnerable, and their suppression gave birth to whispers that would outlive them by centuries. As the years passed, those whispers grew louder. The Illuminati became the perfect scapegoat for revolutions, wars, and political upheavals. In every period of uncertainty, people found comfort in the idea that events were not random, but orchestrated by an invisible hand. The real organization may have vanished, but the myth of the Illuminati gained a life of its own, spreading through books, sermons, and later, the media of the modern world. Then came the rise of pop culture. Symbols of the eye, the pyramid, the triangle, whether carved into ancient stone or flashed in music videos, fed into the belief that the Illuminati had not only survived, but thrived. Hollywood blockbusters, best-selling novels, internet forums, and celebrity rumors all blurred the boundary between fact and fantasy. And somewhere along the way, the myth became more powerful than the history itself. But here is the truth. The Illuminati's greatest power was never control over kings or presidents, but influence over imagination. Their story forces us to question authority, to doubt official narratives, to search for meaning in chaos. Whether you see them as a long-dead society, a global conspiracy, or a cultural metaphor, the Illuminati endure because they speak to something timeless within us. Our fear that unseen forces shape our lives and our hope that we might one day uncover the truth. The untold history of the Illuminati is not just about secret societies or hidden symbols, it is about us. It's about how we perceive power, how we explain success, how we make sense of the world when answers seem out of reach. In that sense, the Illuminati will never truly die. They live on in our suspicions, our stories, and our endless search for what lies behind the curtain. And so, the question remains, are the Illuminati the architects of history, or simply the shadows we cast when we fear the unknown? The secrets may never be fully revealed, but perhaps that is exactly what keeps their legend.